Right. All right.
Right on.
And Bitcoin is over 10K, isn't it?
It is over 10K, so it gets the salute.
The thing I've been watching is Ethereum. I mean, that's just been
Oh.
wild.
It looks like it's in a bull. Yep.
Yeah.
So today here is I think it's our 36th episode of the Crypto
Happy
Mind
36
podcast. Woohoo! And for the special anniversary edition, we have Dan Conover.
What's up,
Is that how you say it?
Yep.
And on Telegram, I know him from Telegram. He's known as Data Center Dan.
That's right.
So I take it we're going to be talking about data centers today.
I mean, we can talk about, whatever we want to talk about, but I'd like to kind of say a few things about it, in the next 45 minutes or so.
Yeah. Bitcoin, mining, mobile containers, all that stuff. You're really into them, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for so damn long that, I mean, it's, I can tell you guys all the way from like a tier 1 out to a, Bitcoin mine where someone just tried to be as cheap as they possibly could and it didn't work. And then
so Dan, tell us how did you get started in this industry? Where did it all begin?
So I was working for Amazon doing design and learned about Bitcoin, and probably like both of you guys or anybody else watching it, the first time you learn about it, you stay up for 48 hours straight. Your girlfriend or wife thinks you're fucking crazy.
They still do. Yeah.
And then you start telling all your friends about it, and all your friends are like, you're crazy.
So when was this? What was the year? Was this 2017?
No, this was 2011.
Oh, okay. You were in the first wave.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was back before like everyone was just like, you're nuts, man. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, why do we need new money? Like money works. We live in the US. I mean, it's good here. And then, so I started doing stuff on local Bitcoin because I was just kind of like, I just want to get into this thing. I don't know why, but I want to get into this. And this person approached me and then met up with me and was like, hey, I'm buying 300 spawn dualies. And those are like actual server units. I love those units. They were phenomenal.
Did you know what they were at the time?
What's that?
Did you know what those were?
Dualies, like
I knew I'd mined on like little USB sticks. So I like knew the whole process, but he found me on local Bitcoin. And then he set up in Digital Fortress downtown Seattle, 25 cents a kilowatt hour.
Wow.
And it was just like apparent almost immediately that he was not going to make it. And so we were like, hey man, like we can develop a data center. And I mean, it sounds like, oh, cool, you guys developed a sweet data center. It was the most janky Bitcoin mine. But
it was a ratchet data center.
Oh, it was so bad. There was actually a picture of it in 2017 when Wenatchee was trying to shut down the crypto mines. Like there was a picture of us building it being like, this consumes as much power as 100 homes. And it's like just 2 racks sitting in a warehouse. Like, but turns out the guy was running a Ponzi scheme. And it was bad at first, but it ended up with us taking his assets over. And then one thing led to another. Now we have about 12 megawatts spread out throughout the US. We've done projects in Sweden. It's not like we have any secret sauce. We've just failed so many damn times and learned from our lessons. And
there's no other choice but to do it the right way, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not an AWS facility. I mean, it's not, you don't need 10 gigabits with triple redundancy and all these tiers of security. I mean, there's this balance between cost and efficiency and lowering your employment as much as you can. And unfortunately, I hate saying that, but that's part of the game.
No, yeah, because a lot of people are trying to really trick out their data centers, and it's not necessary sometimes. And then there's some people that are just trying to get by on the cheap, and there's pros and cons, like you're saying. It's a balance.
Well, there's really 3 things that, and it seems to be uncommon for everyone to hit it correctly. Is the most important thing is the air system. I don't know why, because air is engineering, but it's also kind of a science. The electricity, everyone almost gets right every time. I mean, sometimes they do it in a too cheap of a way with aluminum. Sometimes they do it too expensive. They could have saved money, but that one they usually get decent. And then the network is also kind of like the air system. A lot of times people don't get that correct, but it's those really, that's just the 3 attributes of a decent Bitcoin mine.
So tell us about the air. What needs to be done with the air?
In 2013, somebody somewhere, and I know there's not a lot of like Bitcoin mines on the internet, but somebody decided to do like this horseshoe look where you're sucking the air out but where does the air come from? Well, it doesn't matter, right? We're just going to suck it out. It's like, no. It's still, you still need to supply the facility with air somehow. So if you pull the air out as hard as you can, one, you're going to overwork your fans because they're just under a lot of stress. It's called static pressure. And then it's going to come through the door cracks. Like if you ever go into a facility where you open the door and it's slammed shut, they have an air problem. I mean, I've been to ones where you're like, this is going to break my arm.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's like in a regular data center, which I get it. It's all about cost. In a regular data center, you do a push pull. And when you're pulling that air out, you're actually lowering the density of the air, which lowers the cooling, the coefficient of cooling formula also.
Sure. You need denser air to get greater cooling.
Correct. And so when you provide positive air rather than, and I'm not saying negative air pressure doesn't work, it does, but you have to make sure you vastly oversize your intake. But if you do positive air, what you're doing is you're oversupplying the room with the air that's needed. So let's say you put in 100 units and the machines only require 90. Well, now you take those fans and you lower their load. And so rather than the system fans working at 70% because they're having to be part of the air system, now you're overpowering them. And so they have to work at 30%. And HVAC mechanical is tremendously more efficient than, you know, direct current, tiny little server fans. When you have that nice 3-phase motor, it's quite a bit better. So like this facility, this is our office. We built this since we've been running this, and we had some drywallers come in, and we move a lot of air here. And
every farm moves a lot of air.
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy. I mean you tell. There's this one time that my business partner Wyatt called a greenhouse company and was like, "Hey, I need some advice." When we were first getting started, he's like, "We're gonna move 100,000 CFM and like 3,000 square feet," and they were like, "Dude, you're gonna blow the roof off." He's like, "No," he's like, "We're actually gonna do this." But what happened here, because we positively pressurize everything, is that they didn't wet sand, they dry sanded. So all the sand and all this air, it's just blowing everywhere. So, I mean, I was pissed, but the office got destroyed, the warehouse got destroyed. I mean, it was a huge cleanup project, but the data center floor, because it was pressurized, all of that dust stayed outside of it. And so there's also a benefit of cleanliness in a pressurized environment.
Right.
Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of really, really McDirty farms. Like,
we have like a whole reverse osmosis system to clean boards.
One time I went into a farm and I just set my hand down on the desk, just to have a conversation. And when I lifted it up, it was just pitch black.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Just like the inside of the miners were.
Right.
Oh yeah. We got miners from Virginia. And they were just like right after the fan on the hashboard, they were like black. And we were trying to figure out what the hell that was. And the only thing we could think is that it was like soot and coal from the air. Just like a year of running with no filtration. Like it was nasty.
Yeah. And you get the ones that are close to the sea, and you got the seawater, the sea air coming in.
Yeah. The salt and all that stuff. Yeah.
And there's really nothing you can do about that. That just corrodes the hell out of it, But
so you have a company now, Tesseract. Is that your main company, or what? So you got a lot of other things going on?
So Tesseract's definitely my focus at the time. What we're doing is we're doing high performance modular data centers. I know there's a lot of competitors in the space, but so we do a lot of consulting work. I mean, the ebbs and flow of the industry, when times are good, obviously let's like focus on keeping the equipment up, buying more equipment, things like that. But when times are bad, which it does happen in crypto half the year, we consult. And there was a facility in the US that we went out to, and they'd purchased a container, and they basically wanted us to help them with like some water prevention and a bunch of different things like that. And I felt terrible because I was like, hey man, like it would be cheaper for us to just build you one. And
right.
Yeah.
The client was super positive. He was like, well, let's do it. Like, you guys seem like you know what you're doing. Let's go ahead and do it. And on the flight back, me and one of my now partners were just sitting there being like, this is going to be something that's definitely in demand. Just because I mean, one of the biggest challenges is cost overruns. Is you're like, okay, I have this. It's always a freaking sawmill, but I found this sawmill and we're gonna like retrofit it. And then they get these estimates. They're like, we're at 150,000 a megawatt, and the next thing they know, they're at 300,000 plus, and they're about to go out of business and they're out of cash flow. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it from consulting and working intimately with projects like that. And so the idea is like, the cost of the miner, the cost of the data center, they're both going to work at this point in time. I mean, I know the S17s had some issues, but I assume those are all going to get fixed. The S9s have been tanks. And the idea is that you just can put it on your books. And I'm not ripping on the industry at all, but this is kind of like a spreadsheet based industry when it comes to miners. Like, here's what I calculated, and it's just going to work, right? Like, they don't think of all the craziness that happens.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, our biggest thing is we bring air up through the bottom of the container. So we actually do have.
Yeah, I noticed that in your design. Tell me a bit more about that. That's very different than other designs that I've seen.
So, I mean, water is the enemy here. And when you're pulling air from the side, I mean, I know everyone will say they have like shields or they have an awning or something like that, but it's too high of a risk, especially when you're like in Texas with crazy, like, storms. I mean, where it's like, it comes down where it's like people are throwing buckets on you. And then you're trying to pull that in from a very small medium and suck it through. I mean, it's too risky. And so with our design, and I mean, I've been in one of these things in a torrential downpour, and the first thing that I thought is it was thunder and lightning. I was like, I hope we grounded it correctly. I was like, is this how I die today?
I hope somebody grounded the system well.
It was like, how much do I trust the electrician that hooked this thing up that I don't know? But I mean, it's just get rid of, like, rather than trying to solve just get rid of the problem, bring it in through the floor. And so we filed a patent on it. Surprisingly, we were approved for it. And,
nice.
That's going to be our niche with it, is that we can, bring it in, make sure your air is positively pressurized, well supplied, and that, the techs have a ton of work room too. Because that's another problem with containers, is not a lot of space.
Yeah, everybody's trying to shove as many miners in a space as possible, and that's, they feel that that's an advantage. But it's not always about how many miners you can fit in 1 square foot.
When we do hosting, I know the way that this goes is it's like, how cheap can it be? And a thing I always tell people is like, sure, you can go find 5 cents in China or Malaysia. But what happens when you're only up 70% of the time? Are you going to factor that in? And so when you have these containers that are just packed to the max and the airflow is not proper, you have really turbulent airflow, not laminar airflow. I mean, it can be a problem. And so what we're doing is just solving the rain problem. We're solving the air problem by providing a positively pressurized environment. And then people don't think about the way that the actual servers work. So there's a temperature sensor on. Well, now they're on every chip, but when the system starts, it's like, hey, I'm 22 degrees Celsius. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna do some calculations, and it doesn't change. So as the day goes on and you do this, that machine is actually going to become more or less efficient back and forth. Yeah. So what we've done is we modulate our fans up and down all day long based on the temperature in there. And you might think that's like, okay, well, it can be 70 degrees in the middle of the day and then 30 at night. But just slowing that down a lot, like very stable, it very much just stabilizes that air temperature in there.
So at night you slow down the fan so the temperature maintains a stable temperature, and then in the heat of the day you speed up the fans to evacuate that excess heat.
And it's oversized 125%. The goal is to never have your system run 100%. Say it just the same with electricity. Like, think about a circuit breaker. As soon as you hit 100%, it pops.
It goes pop, yeah.
Right. But you see all these farms where their air systems are running flat out and it's still not enough. That'd be like running your circuit breakers over the limit. It's not a good idea.
So, Dan, can you give me an idea of deployment? How long does it take to get one of these on location and set up?
Sure. So right now, COVID is a little weird. We're going back between Square D and Eaton. We've looked into developing our own panels, but it's just it's a better idea to just let the UL listed long term. An electrician sees an Eaton panel, they don't even question it. You know, if they see a panel that someone like us produced, they're going to be like, okay, I want to know everything about it. I want to talk to
yeah.
Like, I mean, it's
I know I know exactly about that.
Yeah,
we make PDUs and
oh
you know
yeah,
they're the same way. You know.
Make sure you get your ETL listing and make sure you get
Yeah.
your UL listing if you can.
Yeah.
So let's say a client orders. Typically, we're 4 weeks in, we're getting close. So like we take a 70% deposit. For 4 or 5 weeks, we're getting close for the client to come pick it up. Obviously,
Okay.
like if a ton of orders came in, that's going to be like way skewed. But our goal that we tell clients is order to delivery is so it's actually not, we stopped retrofitting shipping containers. So we actually build our own. So that's
Okay.
actually, and the reason being is rust. I mean, rust and cutting into the units and it's too time consuming, and you don't know what you're going to get. I mean, sometimes you get these single use containers that are just beautiful. And then the next one that you
other
order,
times
oh, it's just shit. Like
life is a box of chocolates.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, so you send me the first one is good, and then everyone I order after that is just a piece of garbage. Like, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Why are you sending me your like B and C and D stock? You know, like
because you're just going to keep ordering, right?
Right.
Yep.
So, and we can control the process better. We can do it faster. And actually, a shipping container isn't the exact legal maximum that can go down the road on a standard oversize. So,
okay,
we actually bring it up to that exact maximum, so you don't have to have like a pace car and things like that.
Okay. All right.
And so it's a 51.5 foot unit. So it's not quite 53. The extra foot and a half wouldn't give us anything extra. It really wouldn't. So
yeah, might give a bathroom for the workers.
A porta potty in there.
Already lifted off the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. While we're taking this kind of little break here, I'm going to take a moment to talk about our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Ecochain, an up-and-coming player in the cryptocurrency mining industry. Ecochain is focused on powering their expanding set of data center assets with 100% green energy, and I think this is really awesome. Ecochain is a new venture wholly owned by the publicly traded company Mechanical Technologies Incorporated, and you can find them on the stock exchange. Ecochain wants to secure the blockchain with green, renewable energy. It's good for the planet, and it's good for the crypto ecosystem because we get a bad rap, you know, talking about all these power situations and using all these things. We need to be forward thinking. We need to be thinking about solutions that are going to be long-term, not just exhausting our current resources. Ecochain is currently looking to acquire additional mining operations aligned with their strategic models. So if you have a mine and you would like to sell or equipment you think might be a fit, go ahead and give them an email, and Scott's going to put up their email right now for you guys to see.
Yeah. So that's proposals at ecochainmining.com. Check them out. All right. Thanks, Ethan.
Thanks, Ecochain.
I mean, that is kind of true. I'm always worried about the mines that are running off coal. Like that's
right.
Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Keep our mines clean. Stay green.
Like what's going to happen if like global taxes come out on coal, driving the price way up, you know? Like,
oh yeah. I mean,
it's going to happen.
It's been on its last leg for a long time, and we've had lobbyists and politicians just try to, keep it going. But everybody knows the writing on the wall. I wouldn't be surprised if in 20 years it's been almost completely annihilated.
I mean, it kind of just has to, right?
Yeah. I mean,
it just has to.
Yeah.
But I mean, the price of wind and solar is getting pushed down so far. I mean, it's terrible that the tax credits for solar are gone now. But I mean, as those economies of scale just get bigger and bigger and bigger, I mean, it just doesn't financially make sense to build coal.
Well, and we've also got to consider too, hydro is another big thing that we need to reinvest into. But beyond that, they're actually very old nuclear reactor designs, but there are alternate nuclear reactor designs that are extremely safe. And they were decided against by the Department of Energy in the 1960s because they did not make radioactive fuel that could be used for nuclear bombs. And so the idea was, with our current nuclear infrastructure as a byproduct to them generating energy, they would also create this fission material that would be good for making bombs. And that's why they decided to go with that design. But there's another design that's far more safe, has far less waste to it. And I really think we need to open our eyes to that again as well.
Yeah, you're talking about like TerraPower, Bill Gates' funded company.
That is also referred to as a candle wave reactor or a slow wave reactor.
Yeah.
And that's a slight modification to what I'm talking about. This was actually a design that's similar to that, but the slow wave or the candle reactor is a bit more sophisticated. And it was actually meant to be like a home grade reactor. Like you can put this thing in your backyard and for 100 years, it'll generate electricity. And if it were to ever crack open, the radioisotope would just turn into like a crystalline salt that, you know, unless you were to go and pick it up and eat it, like, you know, it really wouldn't do any harm to anybody.
Interesting.
And what was really interesting about the slow wave reactor is as soon as it's expended its nuclear fuel, you can just reload another pellet of fuel in there and it'll go on for another 100 years. And when it's all said and done, the radioactive material that's left over is like next to nothing. But yeah, it's very similar to that technology.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a cool idea because they talk about like our grid is so massive, and you know, we have our power sources like in Washington, we have all the hydroelectric and that power.
Right.
You're out in Seattle, you're like, well, where's all this power coming? It's all coming from the dams out in the Columbia, which technically, I mean, it makes it very vulnerable for the Northwest. If we were like in a war, that'd be a prime target.
Yeah, bomb it, and it's down.
Yeah,
you guys would be total blackout.
And there goes all of our Bitcoin.
Asher would definitely go down. I don't know, with everything going on in Texas, maybe not too bad.
Right? Yeah, Texas is really up and coming, man.
Well, because they're really pushing that wind profile. I mean, it's just the economics of wind make so much sense. Like
they've got solar, they've got wind, and they've got everything there.
They do, yeah. And their grid is disconnected from the country's grid. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Texas.
It is a good place to be staged up. I really hope they don't do a bait and switch like, you know, that's happened so many times in the past where they get all these big power hungry industries in and they're like, yeah, I know you like the 2.9 cents, but we got to raise it to 3.5. And, finally they just squeeze everybody out.
Yeah. I mean, that's I've lived that a couple times out here. It's not fun. And once they get it in their mind too, I mean, it's like politicians, whether they're lobbied and get into place, it's like they've made their stance and they're going to stick with it. So it could be their entire term, but if they're deciding to fight off the crypto miners or the high energy usage miners, even if they change their mind in the middle of it, they're like, nope, this is my objective. And it's, I lived the Grant County lawsuit. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What happened with that?
So I get it. I get their perspective. Like I got to actually know some of the commissioners, but so we went out and built out there, and then all of a sudden it was like 2017 was happening, and so I just imagine this tiny community, this PUD that probably takes like one phone call a week, like, hey, I'm moving my house. Okay, cool. And now their phone's just ringing off the hook, and so they don't know our industry. And so they were writing down, like, I call and say, I want 200 megawatts. So they'd write it down. That's 200 megawatts of potential energy load. And so they have like 3,600 megawatts of production out there. And I mean, they had like over 2,000 requests. And so step one, they put a moratorium in place, which that makes a lot of sense. Like pump the brakes, slow it down. And then they made the decision that, oh, we're these rich crypto miners that can afford 7-8 cents.
Right.
So, but the thing is that they were lobbied by the agriculture people out there who get subsidized by the rate. And so they're looking at this as those pumps for agriculture use a ton of energy. They're looking at it as like farming is so skinny already. We can't have those energy costs go up. So these crypto miners who don't live here, they're not from here. You guys you can get out.
Right.
And so then it became this educational process, and they passed this rate into place that was like, oh, you guys will adapt. But and what was terrible is that at the end of it, there's only like 34 megawatts out there, not 2,000.
Right.
They're trying to claim that like, there's 2,000 in the queue, and half of these businesses, one, don't exist or have gone out of business, They're not responding and things like that. I mean,
Right.
this was like a multi-year process, and it was like trying to educate someone who was closed-minded. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about any of the commissioners and stuff out there.
Sure.
But even worse was that a lot of the commissioners that when the lawsuit was ending, it was all new people. So some of the people that were in it were like, we actually want you guys here. You guys do create investment. You do create jobs. They do make money on the power they're selling us. It's not a ton.
Yeah.
But I get it. Their job is to create industrial growth and use that to subsidize the agriculture. And so they see, and then they sell a shit ton of power out on the open market. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
And so they also look at that's their bread and butter. So if the local guys who don't give them a huge margin are consuming all the power and they're not selling on the open market, then, they were very worried. But they don't understand the economics of the industry and things like that. And so it was a very quick decision.
And the Bitcoin mining reward cuts in half every 4 years. Come on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was terrible when we shut down because they were just like, "Oh, you guys are actually leaving?" It was like, dude, like,
yeah, it wasn't just a threat.
Like,
you don't understand how our business works,
But I mean, so like you're right. I look at maybe like in Texas, they set up 100 megawatts, 200, 300, whatever they're going to get to. All of a sudden, are they going to go like, oh, there's a blockchain tax? And then they're like, wait a minute, we built our whole model around the economics of this,
Right. So Dan, currently Bitcoin is a touch over 11,000, I believe. I'm not looking at the price right now.
Yep.
Where do you see it going? Where does it need to be for this to still be a viable model in the industry?
This is a good question because it's always either up or down, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
obviously, if it stayed at 5,000 for 12 months, I think the vast majority of the industry would collapse.
Yes, I think so too. I think like 8,500 is really the floor. Because a huge portion of the network is still supported by S9s. And if you're at 2.5 cents, 3 cents, it makes sense, but not really. I mean, it's not attractive. It's not like someone's going to invest in that. And then you need an institution to come in to invest in new equipment. I mean, you're going to have your small guys buying like 5, 6, 7, maybe 30, 40, the richer guys. But
yeah, Scott and I are definitely seeing that. We're seeing institutional money coming in.
Yeah.
And just basically, they're going to split the earnings of the miners with you while you pay them back. And then once you paid them back, then, you get 100% of the miners or whatever. But you're absolutely right. There's all these people that have just thousands, tens of thousands of S9s, and they've done all kinds of crazy tricks to them, put in firmware, overclocked them and tweaked and whatever. And they're just barely making money, but they keep on at it because they don't have the capital reserves to just dump them all and, get new machines.
Right. And that's, I think, a huge problem is because the next step in crypto mining could be these massive debt plays where people are taking on millions and millions and millions of dollars of debt. And honestly, for some firms that have billions in assets, and this is 2% of their portfolio, they don't give a shit. They're just
This is
if it breaks even,
here's some chump change.
Exactly. That's, I think we're right at the beginning of that.
Yes, I agree.
I think that's why you see Bitmain putting spot and future onto their price model. So someone in there is a quant, and they were like, okay, this is going to go institution. And these institutions can just, amortize it out over a decade. And so let's do that. And now you're pushing out these actual operators who can't afford it. And it's very much like centralizing it. I'm a big GPU proponent. I've always been a GPU proponent. I mean, we were mining Bitcoin on GPUs. You were OG, man, from back 2011. So tell me about the spot and the future orders. What is a spot order to you? What is a future order to you? Well, like in mining or in actually?
Yeah. Just when Bitmain says a spot order, what does it mean in the industry? When it says a future order, what does it mean in the industry?
It means that they're shipping right now. You're going to get it right away and be able to plug it in.
Like on the spot, right?
On the spot, it's going to happen. And then futures is you're waiting for this slot, usually for a discount. You're getting it for 10% off of what the spot order would be into a future time. And So, let's say you're like, oh, in October, I'll get this discount. And then you calculate out your expected earnings. It usually lines up pretty good. Obviously, when Bitcoin pops, it doesn't. But
yeah.
And that is also, you have to really rely heavily on the delivery timetable of Bitmain. What we're finding is that because of some internal conflicts going on with them, they're actually pushing out those future orders, and not, being timely with their delivery.
Right. And I don't know, sometimes that can be scary, especially with everything.
Very scary.
Oh yeah. I know that, honestly, I'm pretty big into What's Miner at the moment, just because the quality of their product is, so far from my experience, is I don't want to go tell everyone to buy a What's Miner.
Sure, yeah.
But
they haven't had any. They haven't had the S17 failure. Every model they put out has been seemingly fairly
like a
stable.
Workhorse. Yeah, like a workhorse.
Working on them sucks because they're built so well, but that's not really something to complain about too much. Like, oh, it's built too well. Like,
they should have made this more chintzy.
I think with the S17, what happened is they used, because if you look at the thermal epoxy, so I think what's happening is that when the S9 couldn't handle ultra high heat very well, which your data center shouldn't ever get super hot. But people have data centers that get super hot.
Yeah.
And so they had the problems there. You'd have your heat sinks fall off when it would expand on the high end. And so I think Bitmain was like, oh, I got the solution. Let's use high temp thermal epoxy. But high temp thermal epoxy doesn't go the other way. And so now when you get these machines getting too cold, and that's why they shut down.
Yeah,
exactly. The new firmware shuts down at like 10C now. It doesn't go to 0. And so then when it goes, but it's still, the machine's still going down. And then, that contraction all of a sudden pop.
Yeah, it just pops it off.
Interesting.
So well, there have been some other issues too, with temperature sensors themselves not being of optimal quality and causing other issues.
Just like non-reporting, something like that.
I can't remember exactly. Scott, do you remember what the?
No, I don't know the exact issue.
Yeah. There was something about basically a thermal runaway or something on the board, and it was due to a bad temperature sensor or poor quality temperature sensors. Another complaint that I've heard is that the PSUs for the S17s are not they're not overbuilt, so they're kind of pretty much running at full capacity, and the ability to overclock them will be very, very challenging, if possible at all.
And that's like what everyone wants to do is, immersion.
Exactly.
Immersion does make a lot of sense. I have my opinions of it. It does make a hell of a lot of sense. And like we've played with it. It's just expensive. And when you're in this industry of how cheap can you do it, and then all of a sudden you throw into this like, oh, let's do a really expensive thing. All of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm just confused. But hearing that, see, I didn't know that the power supplies weren't overrated, because everyone has that idea of like, I'm going to put it in oil. Overclock the hell out of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if you just air cool it, it's natural to load in some sort of alternate firmware and then optimize it and overclock it or whatever. And one of the huge setbacks that I'm hearing about is because the power supply units, they're smart power supply units, so they actually create like a balance between all the hash boards. And so you can't just feed straight power to the hash boards and everything will work fine. They have to kind of be finely regulated by the power supply unit, and that communication channel between the hash boards and the power supply unit is encrypted.
Right.
So nobody's been able to crack that. So the only way we're going to be able to create more robust power supply units is by understanding that fine balanced communication of how the power supply unit is balancing everything, and nobody's cracked that yet that I know of. So a lot of challenges going on with the newer models to get the most out of them.
Yeah, I know. Who was that? Mike from Alpha Miner was trying to work on a PSU replacement.
Yeah. Well, I think they can go to 20 volt. Is that right? I could be wrong, but it's definitely, it goes higher than 13 volt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've worked with some aftermarket firmware on it. You just really don't get a benefit out of it except for overclocking it. at least at this time. Because with the S9, the aftermarket firmware, you get ASIC boost, and so that.
Oh yeah.
But the new chips already have it enabled out of the box, so
right,
you just get the ability to overclock it. But I mean, that's why like these are switch PDUs. Switch PDUs are like a absolute must, especially when your machines are that expensive, making that much money. Just because something goes down, you can automate the switching process on top of what they're doing on board.
So speaking of PDUs, what are your thoughts? Should you go ahead and spend the 2 or 3 times more expensive cost for a smart PDU, or is it just better to have like a dumb PDU with remote on and off switch?
Do you want to be in business for 1 year, or do you want to be in business for a long time?
Yeah. I mean, so what are your thoughts?
Well, if I was to do consulting, that's exactly what I would tell you. I'd say, are you burning your investors' cash and trying to take the money and run?
Right.
So we can build this thing as cheap as you want, but if you want longevity, I mean, like it's nice sitting in so today we had the Ethereum DAG got to a point where our 4 gig cards started having issues, and our technicians are able to, so they had to stop the mining process, and then they had to capture it right before it started, because the mining process would start and the watchdog would be like, hey, this isn't working, reboot. Right. And so using switch PDUs, they were able to freeze that and have control on the power level. And so rather than sitting down in a data center where the hot aisle is 130 degrees because it's 105 out in Washington today, they could sit in an air conditioned office and just rip through it super quickly.
Right.
And as ridiculous as it sounds, 70% of the issues are just unplug it and plug it back in.
Yeah.
And you can do that from a desk, but then you just go into the PDU and you just say, when it's less than 100 watts from this outlet, reboot. Or you can build fancy software. I mean, I've seen some crazy fancy panels. We had a run at it for a while. No one wants to pay for it, but I mean, and there's open source solutions too, like Zapier and things like that.
Right.
I'm like a huge switch PDU guy. I mean, I'm like it's the best, because like if Scott's like, hey Dan, like I want to send you like 1 miner so I can test, I'm going to be like, sweet, because I can tell you exactly how much power you're using. And then at the end of the month, me and him aren't going to have an argument about it. And that's a huge thing for like hosting facilities. And one thing people don't think about is the PUE, and that's the the HVAC, the networking equipment, all the other things it takes to run the facility than just what the miner's pulling.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
when people are saying, S9s are breaking even right now at 3 cents or at 4 cents. Well, yeah, that's if you're not including the rest of your facility.
Your
what about the lights and the intake and the outtake fan?
What about you? What about you? How much do you want to take from this thing? So it just gives you that full control. And if you're a smart guy, you can, it kind of gives you the whole data center under automated control. And just the idea of like, it's the weekend, you're out having some drinks with some friends and you get alerts like, hey, this just happened.
Oh man, let me fix this.
Right. Well, no, hopefully you already automated it. It'll alert you something happened and it solved it for you.
Even better.
Yeah. And like you said, there's the 2 different scenarios. One, if you're a hosting company and you want that fine grained control to be able to have that 100% uptime. And then there's, the cheaper option where, you don't mind if your miners go down for a little bit. You on the weekend or on the way home or whatever, you can stop at the farm and just reboot stuff manually. So there's those 2 different scenarios. One, if you have investors and you want to burn through the cash, or whatever, if you're just a self miner and want to save money on your build out costs, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what the Tesseract, the idea behind it, all the automation that we've done on board is that it's monitorable and you can automate the entire thing, and you can set it up yourself. Plug everything in, make sure it's all nice and neat. Well, we help everybody out with that, but then you can walk away from it. You can just walk away from it. And obviously, like there's physical, the fans break, like on the machines, things do break. There's so many moving parts, but just the idea of like, I don't need to hire a technician to be here 40 hours a week. Or if you do, maybe they can handle 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. So Dan, tell everybody in our audience how they can reach out to you and get in touch with you if they have more questions.
Sure. It's sales at Tesseract.io. You
Okay.
can, just go to the website. There's like a million contact us forms all throughout the whole thing. I just started up a Telegram as well. There's a big icon in the menu. You're going to be talking directly to me if you go in there. We're going to try to build a little community as things come up, because
Okay.
As we progress to sell these things, really, I want to build like a model where they're delivered and you're like, hey, Dan, like I can't figure out how to control the PDU to this miner. And, I want to start building a form where it'll start out as me and my team talking to people, but really the way these Telegram communities work, all of a sudden it's like your customers start talking to each other and helping each other.
Absolutely.
I see you guys in this all the time. I mean, it's cool the way it works. Really. You build this like 24/7 support where it's not even your own people. So, but, right now we're just getting off the ground. We have a couple of these out. I do have video I just put out so you can actually see a physical one and things like that.
Oh yeah. I'd definitely like to go visit one sometime.
They're cool, man. I mean, it's you walk into it and you're like, oh, this works. Like I'm sure you guys have been in some mines before. You're like, this doesn't.
Oh yeah.
You've been in some where you're like, oh, this feels great. So you definitely get the perspective of like, okay, this thing was thought through all the way.
Watch out. Nick Foster just joined your Tesseract group.
Oh, nice.
and me. So now you have 6 members.
Nice. Hopefully that pushes up.
And Nick's probably going to write about feet or something like that.
Yeah, Nick likes to kind of do some colorful.
I talk to Nick all the time. He's a jokester. I can't ever tell if he's serious or not.
I can't either.
Only when it comes to Bitcoin mining and money. That's when he's serious. But otherwise, it's goat sound. He leaves voicemails with goat sounds, and he sends me pictures of miners with feet.
Oh, today he wants some product that we have, and I told him what it was, and then 2 days later he says bump, and I was like, did you just bump yourself? I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, it was great talking with you, Dan, and getting to know a little bit more about Tesseract and your take on the mining industry.
It's fun stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin keep rising.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, it's down to 10,999 right now.
All right.
That's level.
Maybe we have to keep the podcast going.
Right.
We'll stay above 11. Yeah. All right. Cool, guys. Have a great night.
All right, guys.
We'll talk to you again.
That was a pleasure. Take care.